Orleans Saints podcast, presented by Rouse's Markets. You'll hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and writers that cover the NFL daily. The New Orleans Saints podcast starts right now. Here are your hosts, Erin Summers and Todd Graffanini.
Welcome into the New Orleans Saints podcast. Erin Summers here alongside Sean Fazende. He was on the pregame shows with us all preseason, does a ton of stuff, obviously covering the Saints for Fox 8 and the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network now. We are all throwing a bunch of content that way.
Yes.
So fans can definitely tune in and see more about the Saints and Pelicans right there. So overall, training camp is done. How are we feeling? Just pulse of the team.
Well, I think it was a long training camp. It was an interesting vibe to training camp. I'd said this many times. Just I've covered this team for so long. I've never seen a training camp like this. How calculated they were when it came to practices. How efficient they seemed to be when they were on the field, especially early in camp when it was really that grinding part of camp where you're really far away from games at that point. So you really got to battle through some, pretty tough circumstances because the heat was, was pretty good out there. So I thought that was a really refreshing way to look at training camp, and I thought they got the best out of the players. As for where they currently stand, or as for where they kind of, after the preseason, I think it's fair to say it's a work in progress. I think it's fair to say they're not a finished product. I don't think anyone is. I think there's some challenges headed their way this season. I think there's some challenging situations they're going to have to navigate. And Kellen Moore is a first-year head coach. He's going to have to deal with some stuff that, it's not uncommon, but he's going to have to deal with just how good this team could potentially be this season.
Yeah, definitely in a transitional phase right now. And we knew that coming into the season based on some of the departures of players, having a new coach, a new system on both sides of the ball. We sit here today with the cuts starting. So there's 14 transactions made today. One of those, a terminated contract in running back Cam Akers. And then you move down the list. They've decided on their punter, what they're going to do there. It's going to be Kai Kroger. Did anything stand out to you with some of the players that you saw?
Not really in the first wave. Kroger was the one I really felt like had won that battle pretty convincingly. Remember, they started with Hayball and Burnham, so they actually added Kroger later in the process. So I felt like that was one they had pinpointed, and I felt like he had won that battle. The biggest name, obviously, is Cam Akers, but I felt like that was not a huge surprise to me. Just when you watch the room, how that room is kind of coming together, some youth in that room, some experience in that room. I felt like that was probably the correct call, and Cam can go and catch on with another team at some point. All in all, though, the moves that were made pretty much make sense, pretty much what I was expecting. The next phase of, depending on when you listen to this, the next phase of roster moves probably be the ones that get a little more, okay, that was a close call, but I think for the most part, this first wave were pretty expected.
Yeah, I mean, and it was pretty, even across position groups. You have a couple wide receivers, defensive ends, tackles, tight ends, guards, and a linebacker in Tyreen Powell. I think Deshaun Davis was somebody that stood out earlier in camp, and then he dealt with an injury and was out for a couple games. So maybe that impacted what they were able to see from him. He was definitely somebody who, stood out a couple times at practices and was doing some good work. So whether he ends up on a practice squad here, somewhere else, or gets picked up somewhere, will be interesting to see. When you look at some of these position groups, though, I think right now we're sitting with the offensive line as a big question mark because of the injuries. How are you feeling about that?
Concerning. I like the front five. There's a lot of investment there, and it felt optimistic when Coach Moore talked about Trevor Penning's situation, so hopefully he's getting back soon. We know that's not a season-ending injury, so you're going to have hopefully your starting five up pretty good pretty soon. And I like the front five. I really do. Well, once you get past that, I know Dylan Radins is an experienced guy, and I like him more at guard than I do at tackle. I think he's kind of settled in fairly nicely there at that guard spot. But once you get past that, I mean, the guys they were counting on for some depth, quality depth, not just depth, but quality depth. You talk about Will Clapp. You talk about Nick Saldiveri. You talk about Landon Young, who could potentially be going on IR. I mean, those were three guys I had penciled in as high-end depth guys.
Probably your 5, 6, and 7 when you go back from, obviously, McCoy at the center, so maybe even 6, 7, 8.
Right.
Yeah.
that's kind of where I was with it. I mean, it really was. And then maybe, with Simpkins coming on late, maybe he grabs that 9th spot or however they make the numbers work. But you're talking about a huge blow to your depth with guys that, have NFL experience, a lot of NFL experience. And we saw last year when you don't have that, how that can crumble a season. It could fall off of a cliff. So that was certainly concerning. I look for that area to be a spot they scan the waiver wire and the rest of the NFL to say, okay, who's available, who's got that experience, and who can we bring in here to provide some quality depth. It's just one spot you can't leave yourself vulnerable. Yeah. And I should mention, offensive lineman depth is a scarcity around the NFL. It's just very hard to find that many people that are quality backups at that position, but the Saints have to do their best to find whoever that is.
Yeah, they did pick up Luke Fortner after the game against the Jags, so add some depth there at that center position once Will Clapp went down. So he, I would say, makes the team. He's a part of the 53. And that's where they're starting this week is making sure they have the 53 how they want it, considering the injuries and maybe where they may have to backfill for the first couple weeks. You dress 48 on game day, and you can have a couple of those players be obviously the injured players that fill out the rest of the 53. You have your practice squad at 16, then you kind of start trying to fill that once deadline hits on Tuesday at 3 o'clock. And Coach Moore said he wants to keep as many of these players that are here. Right. It's a process of manipulation.
Well, and it's a puzzle. I asked him in the press conference. He said, how do you do that? I mean, is it difficult? He goes, yeah. They're going to use that inactive as sort of a way to find a way to keep some guys or avoid IR for some guys, or because if you're down at a certain spot, you don't want to say goodbye to a player. You're going to be an impact guy down the road somewhere else that you believe in, because you got a present day injury where someone could be back pretty soon. So that's always been the thing I've always been very curious about, not just this year, but in every year, because how do you make this puzzle come together? Because it's such a big puzzle, and there's so many injuries that you have to deal with. Even on good years, you got to deal with injuries, and you got to manage, different numbers at certain positions. So I think that's always the challenge. And, the things were done around here the same way for a long time. Yeah. I don't know how Kellen Moore's going to approach it. Right. I know what certain previous staffs would have done, but I don't know how Kellen's going to approach it. So I'm very curious, because I just kind of want to feel like how his brain works, how he feels from a number standpoint, how he's going to manipulate the roster in certain areas. So that's always the fun part, just putting that puzzle together. And then you get the initial 53. Then some guys get cut because they bring some other guys on from other teams, one or two guys, whatever it is. And then after that week one, there's even more kind of juggling around. So it's always interesting to watch it all come together. Yeah,
you have a couple people that are dealing with injuries that won't last very long. As you said, he said Penning's trending in the right direction, doing better. Christian Boyd had that hand injury in the game against the Broncos. He's going to be somebody that it's going to affect for a little while. He's probably going to have to wear something on it. I'm assuming he makes the team in some capacity. But you have players like Taysom Hill, Foster Moreau, that you want to have them be a part of this team, and they're unable to play right now. So do they go on PUP? That's something you got to figure out too.
Yeah, and Kellen hasn't. When we bring up Taysom and Foster, you always feel like they're a little further away than maybe some other guys that haven't already been declared out for the year. So certainly feels like the start of the season is a bit of a stretch for both of those guys. Now, what point in the season can you realistically expect them? And does that make PUP a realistic option? I would say it probably is. I don't know. You'd want to designate one of your IR guys there if you still have because I think you still have PUP option for Taysom Hill and Foster Moreau. So that's an interesting one because we haven't seen them on the field. We've seen them out there. We haven't seen them on the field. But at some point this season, those guys will hopefully be back. Yeah, that's a nice boost to morale mid-season. A quarter of the season ends, whatever it is, to get a guy at Taysom's caliber and obviously Foster's character on the football field. So that's another sort of dynamic to watch play out. That's kind of put off to the side just because they've been injured for so long.
And then you take into consideration, is Taysom one of the quarterbacks that you have on the roster? Because Coach Moore said he's always had 3 to 4 on a roster in some capacity, whether it's practice squad or active. You have 3 currently. Is Taysom one of those 3? Is he counted as a 4th? Or do you bring in somebody else? That's going to be interesting as well. And we don't know who the starter is at the moment. I think, again, they're working through the 53 right now, and then they'll turn towards, okay, who is going to be the guy? Right. And it sounds like we'll know on Wednesday.
Well, I think at that point, once they start practicing, it's probably time to get the guy going at that point. So,
yeah, that's something that's up in the air, and I think it could go either way. I think we'll potentially see both Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shuck this season.
I would agree. Boy, I don't know that I've ever seen a competition play that close to a draw that those two did. Like it almost eerie just how much they matched each other the whole time.
Their
just
numbers,
even the
everything.
numbers, the big play to tipped in, Rattler had a 2-point run, Shuck had a touchdown run. I mean, like almost eerie how much they matched each other. So I don't know which way that's going to go. And I heard some previous players talk about, I don't want to be the one to have to make that decision. It's that tough because I think both guys have had their moments of growth, but I also think both guys left the door open for the other guy to take it. And I don't know if either one has really taken it. So whoever they pick, I mean, they're going to go through their grading process, who gives them the best chance, how they can game plan, what can we do with this player, what can we do with that player. I mean, they'll ultimately come to the right decision. It's just, I didn't expect it to play out this long. I thought for sure we'd have a starting quarterback name by the second preseason game. And here we are on this, we're taping this on this Monday, and we're still kind of waiting. So it's been interesting to see.
It is. And I appreciate the candidness, though. Coach Moore does seem like he's telling us everything that he knows on the situation right now. He's not obviously going to tell us details, but he is, when I know, you will know.
Right.
And I believe that. I think he's been funny in handling some of the back and forth with the media. I like seeing his personality.
I mean, it's common at every press conference. And he's got to know what's coming every time. So I think he's handled it pretty well.
He has. And I like that. I think that he's, brought a good energy to the team and the players, something different than we've had around here for a little while, regardless of how it all pans out. You mentioned it, kind of a transition building year here. I don't know. I'm excited to see what we have week 1 against a real regular season opponent.
Yeah. And it's so new. Everything is so new around here. So you can't really they say every year is a new season, this and that, but this really is a new regime, a ton of new players, almost a brand new, it's a brand new coaching staff. I know a couple guys have come back or will remain from the last staff. But so I'm very curious to see how it all comes together. I'm very curious how they utilize that to their advantage, because I think that's the biggest advantage they have going in is no one knows what they're going to do.
And everything in preseason was very vanilla.
Very vanilla.
Which also, how can you set a quarterback up better in the regular season when you know your opponent and you're throwing a little bit more at them? I think it'll benefit whoever it is. Especially
early on, because you're not sure which way they're going to be used. They're going to try to study the preseason tape as much as they can, but you don't really know exactly schematically. And that's more of a Kellen Moore thing. Even before he got here, he used 3 different types of offenses. The way they attack based off of the last 3 quarterbacks that he coached before Rattler and Tyler Shuck, obviously. So I'm very curious to see how it's going to go. I think at some point the tape catches up to you, but I think early on that's their advantage. I know a lot of people on the outside aren't predicting much success this year, but crazy things happen, and you just ride it out. You go week to week, and I think from the fan base standpoint, the media covering the team, I think everyone understands the predicament that they're in right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's a generally positive place to be. You still want to see progress, you still want to see development, but if there's a fundamental understanding of where they are right now, then I think that's ultimately a good thing going forward this season.
Yeah, EVP and GM Mickey Loomis said it. He said, "We want to win every game that we play. That is always our goal, our mentality. We understand, though, that the most important position on the field is probably the most inexperienced this year in the quarterback. So other people are going to have to step up, and we are going to have to develop a lot of these young players and build this season, hopefully, for what we can set up for a lot of success down the road."
Yeah, exactly. And that's a very realistic approach. I mean, look, I was around in 2006. I wasn't covering the team then, but I was around. No one would have thought that year would have turned into 10-6 and an NFC Championship, and obviously the circumstances were so different. But the point is, going into that year, I think there was a little bit of a realistic approach to it. But then all of a sudden, boom, they catch lightning in a bottle, and that can happen again. But more often than not, that's not what happens. Like what happened in 2006. More often than not, you do grind it through with a rookie head coach, who I think there's going to be a game or two this season. They will win based off of Kellen Moore's ability to out-scheme the defensive coach across the sideline. So I think as long as you see those moments throughout the season, I think that's certainly trending that would be trending in the right direction. Now, if you see sort of things aren't kind of developing or whatever, then I think that then maybe you reassess whatever situation you need to reassess. But I think ultimately, as long as you're kind of moving in that right direction, I think ultimately you'd have I use this word, you'll do the air quotes right now, the patience from the fan base. I think they understand, but also the long-term view of what could potentially be if you just go through these growing pains right now.
Yeah, and there's one thing that you can't question with this coaching staff is how highly they're respected across the league. When you go from Brandon Staley and Kellen Moore, so to see it actually play out will be interesting, and what they're able to do and the development part and scheming things up, because you're right. Like, we haven't seen the same offense from Kellen Moore consistently anywhere. He really does adapt to who he has on the team and what works best for them, which I think the players like, sets them up for more success.
Yeah, and I'll say this, like, you watch Kellen Moore just even in the last few months as a head coach, even in his press conferences, he's getting more comfortable. And we talked to him earlier in camp. He talked about, just kind of getting used to the time management thing of being a head coach. The most natural thing for Kellen Moore is calling offensive plays on game day. So that's the one part of this whole equation that I fully, he is going to excel at that, because he understands that's what got him this job. And I think that's where he is most comfortable. He'll get more comfortable with the other stuff, the press conferences, the time management. He's getting there, and he'll have a feel for all that. But when it comes to actual football, calling plays on game day is what he does well, and that's what got him this job. So that's why I'm actually the most confident in Kellen Moore, calling plays.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, the rest of this week, we will continue to whittle down the roster to what will be an initial starting 53, and we'll know who the starting quarterback is, and we'll start building towards the first game against the Cardinals. So I appreciate you. It has been a fun training camp. You've been there every day. We appreciate the coverage and always appreciate your opinion and help on the pod as well. So
thank you for having me.
Thank
Glad
you.
to be here.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Saints podcast, presented by Rouse's Markets. Join us 3 times per week on NewOrleansSaints.com, the Saints mobile app, or you can download the podcast on iTunes. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Saints podcast, presented by Rouse's Markets.